class. My name is Gabby Palomino, and today I will be talking about debate number 3, the role of the United Nations, Side 8, which is the United Nations is an effective world tool to protect human rights across the world. So, just some basic knowledge here. Um, Human rights. What are human rights? So, we often hear about human rights and violation of human rights on TV, social media, but what is exactly human rights? So, according to the Equality and Human Rights Commission, human rights are the basic rights and freedom that belong to every person in the world from birth until death. They apply regardless of where you're from, what you believe, or how you choose to live your life as well. They're always yours and follow you everywhere you go and could never be taken away from you. Although they can sometimes be restricted. For example, if you break a law or um, if the person is a person of interest of national security. Now, going into the human rights here, um, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, known as the UDHR to make it shorter, is a document in the history of human rights. It was drafted by representatives with different legal and cultural backgrounds from all regions of the world. So the declaration was proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly uh, in Paris, and it was held in November 10th of 1948 um, as a common standard of achievements for all the people and all of the nations. So the protection of human rights is a term that was mentioned 7 times in the United Nations Funding Charter, making the promotional and protection of human rights a key purpose and guiding principles of the organization as well. So it was very important, and that was one of the key focus words um, that we're talking or discussing. In 1948, as I was mentioning, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights brought human rights into the realm of international law. So since then, the national has protected human rights through legal instruments and on the ground activities as well. So ultimately, why is the United Nations an effective role to protect human rights? It's because they come together and they serve as peacekeepers. So the goal of the United Nations peacekeepers is to create conditions for lasting peace. Peacekeeping is guided by three main principles, which are the consent of parties. So a country must invite the United Nations peacekeeper to enter, to aid help. Um, the United Nations cannot just send peacekeepers anywhere they want. That would create a lot of chaos and conflict. So, and another thing is that um, they cannot use force except in self-defense and defense of the mandate written in the resolution as well. Now, some of the things that the United Nations have done to aid and protect basic human rights is deliver humanitarian aid. One of the purposes of the United Nations um, is to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian character. So the United Nations first did this in the aftermath of the Second World War on the devastated continent of Europe. So which it helped to rebuild and um, make it stronger as well as it was completely destroyed. The organization is now relied upon by the international community to coordinate humanitarian relief operations due to natural and man-made disasters in areas beyond the relief capacity of national authorities alone. So, for example, um, they, the United Nations, helped more than 50,000 people, mostly women and children living in the southeast Syria Brookbank camp, when the United Nations and partners concluded a 6-day humanitarian aid operation, and they provided life-saving aid to these people. And these were the first supplies they had ever received um, from January. So it was like a year, um, and it was done through the United Nations that these people were able to receive these basic life-saving um, aid that they needed. Another thing as well was the United Nations helping refugees. So the General Assembly created the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East to provide emergency relief for about 750,000 Palestinian refugees who had lost their homes, um, their family, the livelihoods as a result of the 1948 Arab-Israel conflict. Today, some of 5 million Palestinian refugees are eligible for some of those services too. There's a lot of people in need of those services that only the United Nations are able to provide. Now, to conclude, I know that human rights laws have not necessarily met their objective across the entire world. There's too many wars going on across the world. Men, women, and children being bombed and killed. Many fleeing wars and living on humanitarian conditions without running water, electricity, and lacking medical attention. Um, However, the United Nations is an effective role to protect human rights because although the United States is not a perfect system, it is a system that most of the world nations, that keeps most of the world's nations on the same basis and is willing to fight, support, protect, to create and maintain peace at all. Nobody else is willing to do this, but the United Nations is there and is willing to do this. And that is all I have. Thank you.